Nate Dogg's death was tragic, and for years it's been shrouded in mystery. But now, new evidence has surfaced. Evidence that could finally reveal the truth about what really happened. From his ongoing health battles to his struggles with alcohol.
And I looked down, and there was a bottle of Hennessy right by his leg.
This shocking evidence is rewriting everything we thought we knew. Let's break it down. The tragic final chapter. The last chapter of Nathaniel Dwayne Hale's story reads like some real street tragedy mixed with a medical nightmare, complete with family drama, legal beefs, and courtroom battles that are still going down more than 10 years after homie passed away. What really happened to Nate Dogg wasn't just about those strokes that took him out at only 41. It was about watching everything he built from the ground up completely fall apart, wrapped up in accusations, lawsuits, and family warfare that would make your neighborhood drama look like child's play. The first red flag dropped on what seemed like any other day in December 2007, when the cat who had blessed countless hip-hop classics with his smooth vocals got hit with what doctors called a severe and massive stroke that changed his whole game forever. On December 19, 2007, when he was just 38 years old, Nate Dogg got rushed to Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center in Pomona, California, where the medical team initially thought dude had suffered a heart attack. The real situation was way worse than anyone imagined. That stroke left him completely paralyzed on his left side, dealing with neuromuscular problems, loss of feeling, and unable to walk. Surprisingly, there wasn't any brain damage or issues with his thinking or voice, which was some cruel irony for someone whose vocals were his whole livelihood. The doctor stayed optimistic, pointing to his young age and decent health as positive signs for bouncing back. He stayed in the hospital through Christmas 2007, finally getting released on December 26th to start what would become a long, hard road to recovery. But the nightmare was far from over. While Nate Dogg was grinding through physical therapy, stuck in a wheelchair and fighting to get movement back in his left side, the legal troubles kept piling up. In June 2008, just months into his recovery process, he got arrested and charged with felony criminal threats and stalking after allegedly threatening his estranged wife through emails and chasing her on Interstate 405. The stress from these legal battles, combined with what family sources later described as poor eating habits and an unhealthy lifestyle, created the perfect storm. Warren G., his day one homie and collaborator, would later paint a heartbreaking picture of this period.
It was a surprise because he had so much progress. He had progressed a lot. I was like soon as I get home off the road tour, I'm going to go see him.
The cold reality was that Nate Dogg's condition was way more fragile than anyone realized. On September 12, 2008, less than a year after his first stroke, lightning struck twice. The second stroke was devastating, leaving him with limited movement below the neck and requiring a feeding tube. Some reports noted he couldn't speak after this stroke, taking away the very gift that had made him a legend in the game. Warren G's account of visiting Nate during this period shows the full tragedy of his situation.
Starting to be able to tell you like yes and no, I used to talk to him.
But perhaps most poignantly, Warren described how Nate would react to his old music.
I played Ain't No Fun, and he cracked up so hard. I played Legalities, he cracked up.
The man who had been paralyzed from the neck down could still find joy in the music that had defined his life, even as his body failed him. Warren G. recalled.
When I would say little jokes and stuff, and he'd just laugh. And then I would call people on the phone and put it on speaker, and I'd tell them to say what's up to them, like say hi to Nate, y'all.
But behind these touching moments of connection lay a darker truth that wouldn't emerge until years later. Snoop Dogg would eventually reveal that even during his hospitalization, Nate struggled with addiction, noting he kept a bottle of Hennessy in his hospital bed during recovery.
And I looked down, and there was a bottle of Hennessy right by his leg.
The criminal charges against Nate were dismissed in April 2009 due to his severe health deterioration, as prosecutors agreed to the dismissal partly due to his medical conditions. On March 15, 2011, Nathaniel Dwayne Hale died in Long Beach, California at age 41 from complications of multiple strokes, with congestive heart failure cited as a contributing factor stemming from stroke damage. His attorney, Mark Geragos, confirmed the cause of death, ending what Warren G. described as a battle that had lasted nearly 4 years. But death was only the beginning of the chaos that would engulf Nate Dogg's legacy. The man who had earned millions through his musical contributions died intestate without a will, setting the stage for a legal nightmare that continues to this day. His estate, initially valued at around $200,000 after debts, has grown to an estimated $4 million due to ongoing royalties from his music catalog. The central battleground became a war between his widow, LaToya Calvin, and his children, particularly his eldest son, Nigel D. Hale. The disputes began almost immediately after his death, with family members accusing LaToya of causing a debilitating car accident and being unsupportive. Most damning of all, they alleged that she skipped his funeral, a claim that would poison relationships for years to come. But to truly understand the weight of Nate Dogg's downfall, you have to rewind the tape back to the streets and courtrooms that shaped his reputation long before the music made him famous. The criminal past and legal troubles that define Nate Dogg's street credibility. While Nate Dogg's smooth vocals and melodic hooks made him a hip-hop icon, his street cred was built on something way more dangerous. A criminal past that reads like a cautionary tale about the thin line between keeping it real in gangster rap and facing real-world consequences. The man born Nathaniel Dwayne Hale wasn't just rapping about that street life for clout. He had lived it, survived it, and carried those battle scars throughout his entire run in the game. The criminal saga began long before most fans ever heard his name. In 1991, just as he was forming the group 213 with his cousin Snoop Dogg and friend Warren G, Nate Dogg was arrested and charged with armed robbery in connection with an incident at a check changer's check cashing shop in Long Beach, California. The charges stem from allegations that he participated in the robbery, though he consistently maintained his innocence, asserting that the arrest was a case of mistaken identity. The case dragged on for 5 grueling years as his music career began to take off. During this time, he was making his debut on Dr. Dre's groundbreaking album, The Chronic, in 1992, but the specter of potentially devastating prison time loomed constantly in the background. The trial finally took place in 1996 in Long Beach Superior Court, lasting 3 weeks and involving 2 counts of armed robbery. Nate Dogg testified in his own defense, reiterating his innocence, with his freedom hanging in the balance. His legal team, including attorneys David Chesnoff and Marsha Morrissey, argued that police had withheld critical information that could have exonerated him. The prosecution's case relied on witness identifications and circumstantial evidence, but the defense challenged the reliability of these elements, pointing to potential biases and errors in the investigation. On July 19, 1996, the jury delivered a split verdict that perfectly captured the ambiguity surrounding the case. They acquitted Nate Dogg on 1 count of armed robbery, but deadlocked 9, 3 in favor of acquittal on the 2nd count, leading to a hung jury and a mistrial declaration. In a decision that would prove crucial to his future, the district attorney's office chose not to retry the case, effectively clearing him of all charges related to the 1991 incident. But even as he celebrated this legal victory, another storm was brewing. In a separate incident on October 26, 1994, Nate Dogg was charged with armed robbery related to a holdup at a Taco Bell restaurant in San Pedro, California. The accusation was based primarily on a cashier's description of the robber, which allegedly matched Nate Dogg. Once again, he claimed mistaken identity, insisting he had no involvement. The absurdity of this charge becomes apparent when you consider the context. Singer Michelle would later recount that Nate Dogg had a $15,000 check in his pocket from music royalties around that period, questioning why he would rob a fast food restaurant for a small amount. Local accounts from San Pedro residents expressed similar skepticism about his guilt, noting his rising fame and financial stability from music at the time. He was ultimately acquitted on all charges related to this incident, but the pattern was clear. Nate Dogg was living on the edge, caught between his rising musical success and the gravitational pull of his street past. Combined with the 1991 charges, he had faced up to nearly 11 years in prison if convicted, but was cleared in both cases. However, his luck with the legal system wouldn't last forever. In 1996, the same year he was acquitted of the robbery charges, Nate Dogg was convicted of a drug-related offense in Los Angeles County, marking his first criminal conviction and officially designating him as a felon. This conviction would haunt him for the rest of his life, prohibiting him from possessing firearms under federal and state law and creating direct repercussions in subsequent cases. The new millennium brought no respite from legal troubles. On June 17, 2000, shortly after performing at a concert in Anaheim, California, Nate Dogg found himself at the center of what would become one of the most dramatic arrest stories in hip-hop history. The incident involved allegations that would read like a crime thriller: kidnapping his former girlfriend by holding her against her will, assaulting her, making terrorist threats including threatening to burn down her mother's house, and setting her mother's car on fire. He was apprehended by a SWAT team at his home in Pomona, California, in a scene that must have resembled something out of a police drama. During the arrest, authorities discovered a firearm in his possession, unmarked and illegal for him to own due to his prior felony conviction. The charges were staggering: kidnapping, domestic violence, terrorist threats, arson, battery, and illegal possession of a firearm by a felon. His bail was set at an astronomical $1 million, which was posted by his longtime collaborator Dr. Dre, allowing him to continue with the Up in Smoke tour. But the legal machinery ground forward relentlessly. By March 2001, however, the more serious felony charges were dismissed due to insufficient evidence, primarily because the ex-girlfriend refused to cooperate with prosecutors. She avoided avoided being served a subpoena and declined to testify or provide evidence. Nate Dogg ultimately pleaded no contest to the remaining misdemeanor charge of possessing an unmarked firearm as a felon, receiving 3 years probation and a $1,000 fine. The pattern of arrests continued with mechanical regularity. In April 2002, a tour bus carrying Nate Dogg was pulled over for speeding near Kingman, Arizona. When officers detected the smell of marijuana, a search revealed 2 pistols. One, a loaded .38 caliber revolver reported stolen from San Bernardino, and approximately 4 ounces of cannabis. He was booked into Mojave County Jail and released after posting a $3,500 bond. By May 2002, the weapons-related charges were dropped as part of a plea agreement, with Nate Dogg pleading guilty to a misdemeanor charge of marijuana possession. His sentence included 1 year of probation, community service, and mandatory attendance at drug counseling sessions, a pattern that was becoming disturbingly familiar. The domestic violence issues that would plague his later years came to a head in July 2006, when Nate Dogg allegedly broke into the Huntington Beach home where his ex-girlfriend, her new boyfriend, and her mother resided. According to reports, he punched the boyfriend in the face before fleeing the scene, violating a protective order from a previous domestic violence incident. The charges were comprehensive: aggravated trespassing, battery, annoying telephone calls, dissuading a witness from reporting a crime, and violating a protective order. On March 20th, 2008, he changed his plea to guilty on 2 counts, aggravated trespassing and battery, as part of an agreement that he saw the remaining 3 charges dismissed. The sentence included 3 years of informal probation, completion of a domestic violence intervention program, and loss of gun ownership rights for 10 years, restrictions that highlighted just how serious these issues had become. Both the ex-girlfriend and her boyfriend obtained restraining orders against him, creating a legal web that would constrain his movements for years. But perhaps the most dramatic legal episode came in June 2008, when Nate Dogg was arrested on the northbound Interstate 405 at Avalon Boulevard in Carson, California, at approximately 8:30 a.m. The arrest stemmed from allegations by his estranged wife that he had sent her threatening emails, including death threats, and was chasing or following her vehicle on the freeway. He faced 2 felony counts of criminal threats, 1 felony count of stalking, and 1 misdemeanor count of driving on a suspended license. The suspended license charge originated from a prior conviction for driving under the influence of drugs, adding yet another layer to his legal troubles. On July 16, 2008, Nate Dogg was arraigned in Compton Superior Court, where he appeared in a wheelchair due to lingering effects from his December 2007 stroke. The image of the once powerful rapper, weakened by illness and facing serious felony charges, represented a tragic fall from grace. Commissioner Joel Wallenstein increased his bail from $50,000 to $100,000, and he was briefly held while his attorney arranged for a bail bondsman. The charges were ultimately dismissed without prejudice on April 15, 2009, primarily because his estranged wife failed to maintain contact with the district attorney's office. But the dismissal also came partly due to Nate Dogg's severe health deterioration following his second stroke in September 2008, which had left him requiring an assisted breathing tube and confined to a wheelchair. These legal troubles weren't just isolated incidents. They were part of a broader pattern that reflected the dangerous intersection of street credibility and celebrity status that defined much of 1990s hip-hop. Yet beneath the headlines of arrests, trials, and street drama was a voice born in the church, a voice that carried gospel soul into gangster rap and forever changed the sound of West Coast hip-hop. From gospel roots to G-Funk legend, the story of how Nate Dogg became the undisputed king of hooks begins not in the streets of Long Beach or the studios of Death Row Records, but in the humble pews of a Mississippi church, where a young boy's voice first found its power among gospel hymns and spiritual songs. It's a journey that spans from the cotton fields of the Deep South to the palm-lined boulevards of California, from military service to music stardom, and from anonymity to becoming one of the most recognizable voices in hip-hop history. Nathaniel Dwayne Hale was born on August 19, 1969, in Clarksdale, Mississippi, to Daniel Lee Hale, a pastor, and Ruth Holmes, who led the church choir. His earliest musical education came in the Lifeline Baptist Church in Clarksdale, where he began singing as a child, absorbing the gospel traditions that would forever shape his vocal style. His influences during this formative period included soul icons like Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, and Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire, artists whose emotional depth and melodic sophistication would later become hallmarks of his own work. When his parents divorced and he was 14, the family made the pivotal move moved to Long Beach, California, where Nate continued his gospel education at the New Hope Baptist Church, led by his father. It was in Long Beach that the pieces of his future would come together in ways no one could have predicted. At Long Beach Polytechnic High School, he formed friendships that would change the course of hip-hop history, particularly with his cousin Calvin Cardozo Broadus Jr., later known as Snoop Dogg, and Warren Griffin III, who would become Warren G. But the transition from Mississippi to California wasn't easy for a teenage Nate. At 17, feeling the need to prove himself and test his maturity, he made the surprising decision to drop out of high school and enlist in the United States Marine Corps just 30 days later, seeking to see if he was a man. For 3 years, he served as an ammunition specialist in the Material Readiness Battalion of the 3rd Force Service Support Group, stationed at Camp Schwab in Okinawa, Japan. His military service ended in 1989 under circumstances that remain somewhat murky. Sources conflict on whether his discharge was honorable or dishonorable, with some reports suggesting it was due to going AWOL or other issues. After leaving the military, he briefly turned to selling drugs to make ends meet. The pivotal moment came in 1990 when Nate Dogg reunited with his childhood friends to form the rap trio 213, named after the Long Beach area code at the time. The group recorded their first demo in the back of the VIP record store in Long Beach, a humble beginning that would lead to world-changing consequences. The tape found its way to producer Dr. Dre after Warren G played it at a bachelor party, setting in motion a chain of events that would define West Coast hip-hop for decades. Nate Dogg's professional debut came in 1992 on Dr. Dre's seminal album, The Chronic, where his smooth, gospel-infused singing complemented the emerging G-Funk sound. He appeared on tracks like D's Nuits and Lil Ghetto Boy, establishing his signature hook style early on, but it was in 1994 that he truly arrived as a force in hip-hop with Regulate. His collaboration with Warren G, Regulate, built around a Michael McDonald sample, peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, went double platinum, selling over 2 million copies, and earned a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. The song's success wasn't just commercial, it helped define an entire subgenre and established Nate Dogg as the go-to artist for melodic hooks that could elevate any track from good to legendary. Warren G would later reflect on Nate's incredible versatility and musical intuition.
That's how me and Nate is, right. You know what I mean? So anything I would bring up, it don't matter what it was. I could put on some like a jazz tune that's like off balance and just crazy. He'd come up with some to that.
Warren's assessment of Nate's unique abilities painted a picture of an artist who was both musically gifted and street authentic.
Anything that you could put in his face, he would turn that into something.
This combination of musical versatility and street credibility made him invaluable to Death Row Records during their golden era. But behind the smooth vocals and melodic hooks lay a man whose authenticity came from lived experience, not manufactured persona. Tamala Jones, who dated Nate Dogg briefly, provided rare insight into the person behind the public image.
I met a different Nate Dogg than the one that everyone else got to see. I actually met Nathaniel Hale. I didn't meet Nate Dogg.
She revealed the profound influence of his religious upbringing.
I'm not going to totally destroy his image, but this is a man that grew up in a church, whose mother was the choir leader in the church.
Oh, that's where the scene came from.
And his father was the minister. That's who I met.
This duality, the church-raised choir boy who became a gangster rapper, would define much of his artistic output and personal struggles. The feuds that marked Nate Dogg's career weren't just manufactured for publicity. They were rooted in real tensions, genuine rivalries, and the dangerous intersections of street politics and music business. The most documented and violent of these conflicts involved his battles with BG Knockout and Dresta, two Compton rappers signed to Eazy-E's Ruthless Records, who became caught up in the larger Death Row versus Ruthless war. The beef escalated dramatically during the filming of Warren G's Regulate music video in 1995 at a Los Angeles golf course. BG Knockout described the incident in vivid detail, explaining how Nate Dogg, riding in a golf cart with Coolio, ran over his foot, ruining new shoes and injuring his toe. When BG confronted him, the situation exploded into violence. Dresta's account of being struck with the golf club provides a chilling glimpse into how quickly tensions could turn deadly.
It was horrible.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But where'd you get hit?
My head, my hand was broke. I actually blocked it. I didn't run from the golf club. I was giving Nate his chance. You got one swing, and you know what I mean? And I knew I can do that. And I blocked it, but it was so much force that I didn't anticipate to even block it.
The force of Nate's swing was so powerful,
it broke my hand, and when the tip of it hit me, I bust my head, but then the tip of it broke off of the club. That's how much force, where it could have probably killed me if I didn't. You know what I mean?
Nate Dogg himself addressed the golf club incident in rare footage, downplaying it, but acknowledging the reality of the beef.
And my response is like, it's about 100 people around there, and one of them went behind me. So I'm like, well, either I swing now, else I just get swung on. So then it all jumped off.
This wasn't just random violence. It was part of a larger pattern of confrontations that reflected the very real dangers of the hip-hop world in the 1990s. But beyond the musical innovations and street credibility, Nate Dogg's story is ultimately one of unfulfilled potential and tragic loss. His sons have continued his legacy. Najiel Hale, in Hale, released Young OG in 2020, and Nathaniel Jr. Lil Nate Dogg dropped Son of a G in 2015, but the family remains fractured by the very wealth and fame their father created. The man who once sang about loyalty, brotherhood, and the bonds that tie people together ultimately left behind a family torn apart by those very same ties. His music catalog, now valued at $4 million and growing through ongoing royalties, has become not a source of unity, but a battleground where former allies have become enemies, and where the next generation fights over the remnants of a legacy built on collaboration and community. The tragedy isn't just that Nate Dogg died young from preventable health complications, or that his criminal past caught up with him repeatedly throughout his career. The real tragedy is that the man who spent his life creating music that brought people together, whose voice served as the bridge between hardcore gangster rap and mainstream accessibility, whose hooks literally held together some of the greatest songs in hip-hop history, left behind a family that couldn't hold itself together in his absence. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.